Hello everyone, welcome back to Kotlin Pro. In this video, I am going to show you how to create a login page using Retrofit. So let's get started. So over here, I am using a Postman. Check my login API, and this is the endpoint I am going to hit. This is a post request, and I am passing the email and password inside the body. So if I click on the send, you can see there is a response coming. We don't need too much data, so I am just going to use this message and token. Okay, the message will tell us whether the login was successful, and the token is usually a JWT, which will use for the authentication in the future requests. So, so I've created this project, and now I'm going to show you how to set up the network security configuration in Android. By default, Android doesn't allow the HTTP request due to network security reason, and especially in newer versions. Since my backend is running on the localhost 3005, so I need to allow the clear text traffic for development. To fix this, we'll create a network security configuration. So let me just create the file first. So we'll just open this inside of resource and the XML. We'll create a file over here. Click on the new and the XML. Let's name it for network. I think config. So this will be the name. Just minimize the sidebar. Let me remove this. And inside of this, we'll use this network. Mm. Inside of it, we'll use the domain part. Okay. Config, clear text, traffic. Okay. So we'll make it delete. And inside of this, it will be true. So we'll allow the network clear text traffic permit first. And inside of it, we'll have to use a subdomain. So let me just write down it first. Now, inside of this subdomain, we have to pass the IP address. So we all devices have their own IP address. So since I'm using this device, so I have to open the command prompt and write down the IP config to get my IP address. So this is the IP address I have. So let me just copy it and paste it over here. So it's done. Now this will tell you the Android to allow the HTTP request to localhost. We have one more task pending. Now open your Android manifest file, and inside the application we have to mention the network security configuration. This is the file we have created, and I've already inserted the internet permission over here. So that's it. Now Android will allow the HTTP request to localhost, and we can test our API during the development without running into blocked networks. Okay. Now it's time to add our dependencies. So we have to add those dependencies inside our Gradle. Inside the model, we add these dependencies over here. So let me just copy the dependencies and paste it over here. So these are the dependencies we need. Now I'm going to show you how to create an API client object which will handle the Retrofit setup for my app. So just go over here and click on the new, then go to the Kotlin class file. Here, select the object and let me name it as API client and hit the enter. So inside this object, I am going to define the base URL of my backend. Right now, my server is running locally on my network, so I will use the IP address. So let's write the code and let's use the private const val. Let me just use it as name base URL. Inside of this, I will use the IP address. So let me just copy it Okay, before copying the IP address, I have to copy this thing and paste it inside the base URL. Now I will copy the IP address and replace this localhost with my IP address. So the base URL has been completed. Next, I am going to create the retrofit instance using the lazy block. This will ensure that the retrofit object is only analyzed when it's first used. So let me just code it first and then I will explain. So to create the instance, we need the API interface file. So we'll create the API interface first. So I will name it as API interface. Select the interface. Hit the enter. Now we will write down the interface name and using the by lazy. Now inside of it, I will use the retrofit dot builder and using the dot operator over here, will pass the base URL, which will be our this variable which I have created. We'll pass it like this, and then we have to add the add converter factory, and inside of it, we will pass the JSON converter factory dot create. So it will convert the JSON, and now use the build dot create. And inside this create, we will pass our interface file. So API interface, then double colon and class.java. So finally, I am connecting this retrofit builder with my interface called API interface, which will define the separately with all API endpoints. Now I can simply call the API client.instance from anywhere in my app to access the API methods. This way, I don't have to set up the retrofit again and again because it's all centralized over here. Now let's define our API interface. So I've already created the file, and inside this API interface, I have to mention the endpoints. So this is the endpoint of our login page. Just copy it, and we will use this post method first. So we will use that at the end post. Then inside of this bracket, we use the colon and paste it over here. So it's the endpoint. Now we have to call this endpoint using a function. So I'm creating the function name user login. This will take a request body, which is a login request data class, and also it will returns a call object that wraps a login response. So we haven't created the data class yet. So let's create it first. So I will click on the new, and inside of it, I will select the Kotlin slash file, and now let's create the data class over here. So I will create one data class named as login request. Let's select the data class. This is our first data class, and inside of it, I will just pass this email, the parameter. So I will use the var email. It is a string format, so I will just pass the string, comma. Again, I am using var for the password. pass it as string. So this will be our body request. Now we have to create another data class for our login response. So create the data class that name is as login response, and inside of this we have to add this message. It will be a string response. So we'll use string. And we have to create another one. And we have to name it as token. Also a string type. So data classes has been completed. Now inside of this fun, we have to use the body annotation and use the request with login request. Now we have to use the colon and handle the response part. So we'll handle it as called. So call objects that will wrap the login response call, and inside of it is the login response. And now open the login activity, and inside this login activity we'll create the login screen logic. Now press control button and click on the activity underscore login to open the XML file. So it will open it, and now we can design the UI for our login page. Inside of this page, we need to edit text. So I will use the plain text and we'll just simply drag and drop here. Since I am using the constraint layout, so we have to match the right, left, and top without parent. So this will be for the email. Let me just create email ID and let me just set up a width 300 dp. Now let me just copy, or you can say let me just drag and drop another edit text. And this time I will connect the top with the endpoint of the email ID. I will just set up the now let's add one button. Now let me just set up all the things. So let me just get the password and just change the text of the button. Slot. Let me give it a 100 dp width, 150. Yes, this looks good. And let me give it a top margin of 25 dp. Let me just copy this one, paste it over here, and do the same for this one. And 100 dp. And this looks good. A decent design. Now let's declare our edit text for the login activity. I can type it, let it back. It is a text. And this simply this line and goes to password. Okay. For the password line, we need a button. Just again copy this one and say login for the button. So we have declared the variables for view. Now we have to initialize the variables. Let's initialize it. Copy this one. But ID dot. Let me just check what is ID. Edit text. Let me just paste over here and password edit text. Simply do the same thing. So we just copy and paste over here. And this one ID is text 2. Now ID button. So I'll just use the login button. This will find the ID. Set up it. ID dot. Now we have to use the login button and use a set on click listener on it so that I can perform the API task. So I will use the set on click listener, and inside of it, our first task will be to read the inputs. So with this input, we have to create two variables. One is the fan email, which will read the email edit text. We'll use the dot text dot toString dot trim. So we don't need extra spaces after the email ID, so we'll use the trim method. and we'll another variable called password, and we'll hit this password text over here. Use the same text dot toString dot trim. Now we have to add some validations for our email ID and password. So let me just put it first. So I have created two validations over here. One is for email and another is for password. So if the email or password, either of one of them is empty, it will show you a text and return back to on-click listener. Now I'm going to call the login API using the retrofit through our API client. So let me complete the code first, then I will explain. Now let me explain the code over here. Let me just remove the extra space from here. And over here, I'm creating a request object using the entered email ID and password. Now in the line number 51, I'm calling the login API using the retrofit and waiting for the response. So I am passing two parameters on response. One is call and another one is response. Now if the response will get successful, then it will come to this if part, and I am getting the response data and extracting the token over here. I am also using another condition over here. If the token is not empty, it means login was successful, and the token will be saved inside the shared preference with the help of get shared preference. Now I am passing a toast over here for the successful login, and also using the intent in the below line, so that if the login gets successful, I will move to the main activity. Now there is a else part over here, where if the login gets failed or the token was not found, then we'll show the toast for login failed. Now we have another else part over here for invalid credential. So if the success response will not get successful, then we will use that part. And we have a on failure method over here. So we are passing two parameters, call and t, which is our call method, and throwable, where we are going to catch the error. So we will pass the toast and passing the error over there using the string interpolation. Now let's wait for the emulator to get started. Okay, it looks like I haven't changed the intent filter from the manifest file. So let me just open the manifest file and change it. Okay, now it is open from my login activity. Now let me just copy this one and let me just quickly paste it over here. Now let me put the password over here. Let's click on the login and let's see if it is working or not. Okay, the app got crashed, so might possible there is an error. Let me check the error and figure it out. So it says the base URL must end in /. Okay, let me check where I'm making the mistakes. Let me check the API client file, minimize it. Let me open the API. Okay, so I have mistakenly added the suffix part here as well, so let me just remove it and let's rerun the app. Let's enter the login credential again. Let's enter the password now. It has to be worked this time. So okay, so their login successful toast is coming and it is going to the main activity. So let me just quickly open the main activity and edit the text over there so that we can understand it properly. So let me just change the text to welcome to main activity. Now let me just resize the text. Let's say suppose 25 dp, and let's rerun the app again. Let me close all this. Okay, just close all tab and let's rerun it. Okay, let me just copy the credential again and paste it. Okay, let's wait for a minute. Okay, just paste it over here, and let me just enter the password. Let me put a wrong password first, and let's check if the else part is working or not. Okay, so the invite credential is coming, so else part is working properly. So now let's put the correct password and let's log in. Okay, it is going to the main activity successfully, and the login successful toast is also coming. So that's it for the login part, guys. I hope you liked this video. If it helped you, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe the Code Hunter Pro. See you in the next one.